Cyclone Fina closing in on the Northern Territory, Darwin on Saturday. Here is the latest on Cyclone Fina, just off the coast of the top end of Australia, currently located near 10.4 degrees south, 133.2 degrees east. It looks like the storm's a little bit further west than it actually is. Radar supports that the centre of the storm is actually a little bit further east, possibly decoupled from that convection and that convective pattern there. Currently though, we're giving it 60 mph winds, which is nearly 100 km/h sustained, and a pressure estimate of 987 millibars, moving south-southeast at 2 mph or 3 km/h as of 9 PM Australian Central Standard Time. Well, here's the storm's position displayed on the map right now, with storm force winds extending out up to 100 nautical miles on the southeastern side. That's around 160 to 170 kilometers. And a cyclone warning is in effect for several areas along the top end region of Australia, including the Cobourg Peninsula. It is 58 kilometers from New Year Island, 90 from Croker Island, 140 from Warui, 255 from Jabiru, and 342 from Darwin. Well, the storm is expected to turn now towards the southwest and then swipe through that region that we've just been talking about, and including Darwin, probably during the course of Saturday, and there still could be the possibility that some strong winds occur there. However, flash flooding is likely to be the biggest threat from this storm across coastal areas of the top end, including the Tiwi Islands and Darwin. Whilst the storm could re-intensify near land and during its land passage, the primary risk remains high rainfall totals of over 250 millimeters, some of which could fall quickly, which would obviously be a concern for flash flooding. With that said, some models are indicating right now that hurricane equivalent force winds could arrive in Darwin during the course of Saturday. Here's the forecast then over the next few days, our forecast that is, the storm passing just to the northwest of Darwin via Melville Island, and then continuing southwestwards and continuing just along the coast there, weakening substantially. Quite a bit of uncertainty towards that later part of the forecast period. Either it will move inland and move towards Derby, or it will remain offshore and remain stronger as it moves out to sea. Well, currently 60 mph winds is what we're giving it. The Bureau of Meteorology quite close to that as well. The JTWC higher at 70 mph. They actually called it a hurricane equivalent storm, Category 1 Saffir-Simpson earlier today. I'm not sure I agree with that. ADT estimates are even higher than that actually as well. Bureau of Meteorology say that it is a Category 1 on the Australian scale at this point and expects to re-intensify to Category 2 over the course of tonight, the overnight hours, into tomorrow morning. They expect it to be a Category 2 again, and there it is, reaching the Cobourg Peninsula during the course of tomorrow evening, and then moving on towards Darwin by Saturday evening, according to their forecast. The JTWC have a stronger storm than what the Bureau of Meteorology is saying. They're expecting an 85 mph storm peak very close to Darwin itself, which would equivalent probably to a Category 3 on the Australian scale. The GFS model is somewhat in line with that as well, and then continuing southwestwards, and then a landfall further down there, and then moving inland and dying off completely very quickly over those sparsely populated areas in the Northern Territory, getting on towards the coast of Western Australia in the end. But looking closely there, it's a very small system, I need to point out as well, and it will remain very small as it does what it's expected to do there. We certainly do expect that it will hold on to quite a lot of that intensity. I still have possibly misgivings as to whether it becomes hurricane equivalent storm when it moves through there, but certainly the possibility is there, depicted by the computer models. Other models though aren't as keen. Rainfall expectations there, you can see very high amounts in the initial phases there. The storm winds down very quickly as we get towards the start of next week, but in the initial phases there, the western and southern sides of the storm will be producing very high amounts of rainfall, and that will continue up until that second landfall, if that happens, where it will likely be at its strongest. Again, very sparse areas there that will be affected. That would be the Balangara area, I believe. Rainfall expectations then in total over the next 5 to 7 days are going to be very high over Melville Island in particular, and possibly Bathurst Island as well, and we're looking at rainfall maximums there of over 250 millimeters of rain, in fact double it, 500 millimeters of rain possible there for parts of Melville Island. For the Darwin area, we're looking at maybe 200 millimeters of rainfall potentially, and along all of those coastal areas nearby as well, we're looking at similar amounts. Sea surface temperatures are very warm around the storm at this point. Still, these numbers read a little bit low, and obviously they're in Fahrenheit, so I'll convert around 28 degrees Celsius at minimum, but in some places pushing maybe even higher than 32 degrees Celsius later on in the storm's path, so that's not going to be an issue for Fina. And of course, interior temperatures in Australia extremely warm, as you'd expect. Well, let's take a look at the satellite imagery now. Like I mentioned earlier, it is somewhat misleading looking at the infrared. You might think that the center of the storm is already very close to Melville Island. Well, in fact it isn't. Radar returns are suggesting that the center of the storm is much further towards the east, just along the northern coast of the top end itself. But looking at this imagery, you might think otherwise. Massive burst of convection along that northwestern side. That will obviously be producing huge amounts of rain underneath, but it's mostly, if not completely, offshore. And this is the Force 13 website imagery, which you can check out at any time, force13.com, and that is pretty much centered on where we think the center of the storm actually is, which is underneath some of those eastern bands. And I must say the storm is not looking quite so hot in these last frames. It looks like it has unraveled a fair bit. We gave the storm a peak of 65 miles per hour yesterday, down to 60 miles per hour at this point, and at the moment it does look like further weakening might occur before this storm tries to get itself together again. I'm really not impressed looking at the Zaire imagery there about its structure, or how little structure there actually is of this storm. Look closely at the radar and you'll see exactly where the center of the storm actually is. There you go, you can see it quite clearly. It is well towards the northeast of the Coburg Peninsula and Croker Island, and still moving pretty much south-southeast at this point, very slowly. That may be a problem for the storm, because I think if it was already moving more quickly towards the southwest, it will have caught back up to that convection, which is starting to run away a little bit from the storm itself, and so it's causing a bit of a mess from Fina's point of view. Latest imagery from RAM. This is the 4-kilometer imagery, and you might appreciate more now just how small this storm actually is when you look in contrast with the hugeness of Australia, of course, but the storm itself for tropical cyclone proportions is very small. There's last visible imagery before it got dark in the area, showing you a little bit more of where the center of the storm actually was, and here's some more infrared once again. Again, underneath those eastern bands is where the center of the storm is, with good confidence based on those radar returns. Elsewhere around the world, it's quite similar to what we were looking at in the last update. The Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic are thankfully very quiet. The activity is all in the Eastern Hemisphere, where we have a 40% chance now for the Bay of Bengal, could be a significant cyclone next week, and an area of interest in the Western Pacific, which has a 30% chance as it reaches the Philippines this weekend or early next week. Fina, also down there in the Australian region, will continue updates.